Glory is a lie, or at least it's a half-truth. And a half-truth, when you get right down to it, is the most brazen lie of all. We are taught about the great men, the visionaries who defied a flat earth, who sailed into the sunset. They are the heroes of our textbooks. Their statues are cast in bronze, massive, imposing, gazing into the distance, planted in the center of our city squares. They are Columbus, they are Cortés, they are Pizarro. They are the men who discovered the new world. They brought the light of civilization and the cross of Christ to the savage lands. That is the epic carved in stone, an epic of courage, of perseverance, and of manifest destiny. But there is a problem, a fundamental problem. You cannot discover a place that is already inhabited. You cannot discover lands where tens of millions of people had already lived, had already built empires, had already mapped the stars, had cities that dwarfed London or Paris at the time. The word discover is a cover, a euphemism. The correct word is invade. The word enlighten is a distortion. The correct word is destroy. The glory we celebrate is not the glory of exploration. It is the glory of conquest. A brutal conquest built on limitless greed, religious fanaticism, and a terrifying hidden truce. The truce of the conquered. Are we celebrating the wrong people? This question is not meant to be provocative. It is a question of fact. Why does history celebrate the men who brought guns, germs, and hunting dogs trained to rip people apart, while forgetting the names of the millions who lived there? Why do we know the name of the Santa Maria, but not the name of Anacaona, the Taino queen who greeted Columbus with dance and food, and was later hanged for daring to resist? When we look at that bronze statue, what are we truly admiring? The courage to cross an ocean, or the cruelty to chop off the hands of thousands of natives for failing to deliver enough gold? And the biggest question, what if civilization wasn't what they brought? What if it was what they found and then, at all costs, destroyed? To understand the scale of the tragedy, we have to flip the map. We have to stop seeing the story from the ironclad deck of the conqueror's ship. Stand on the shores of the Taino in the Caribbean. Stand on the pyramids of the Aztecs in Tenochtitlan. Stand on the mountain paths of the Inca in Peru. Imagine it. You do not see brave explorers. You see floating mountains of wood with strange white wings. You see men with pale skin covered in thick facial hair as if they are sick. They smell. They are encased in a shiny metal skin, something you have never seen. They ride on enormous four-legged beasts that snort smoke in the cold morning air. Beasts you might call deer without antlers. And they carry magic sticks. Sticks that erupt with thunder and kill from a distance. For you, this is not a cultural exchange. This is an apocalypse. These are angry gods or demons walking out of the ocean. Your hospitality, your tradition of welcoming the stranger, is your first fatal mistake. You offer them gold, the soft, beautiful metal you use for decoration to honor the gods. You do not know that for them gold is not beauty. Gold is power. Gold is a sickness, a fever that will burn your entire continent to the ground. And the most terrifying weapon they brought was completely invisible. It was not steel. It was not the harquebus. It was their breath. It was on their skin. Smallpox, measles, influenza, the plague. Diseases that Europe had lived with. Diseases that killed children but left adults immune. For the peoples of the Americas, isolated for millennia, this was a biological holocaust. It is called a virgin soil epidemic. The germs traveled faster than the invaders themselves. They went ahead of them, clearing the path. They swept through villages, through cities. People died so fast they could not be buried. Families died in their huts. The stench of death was everywhere. Social structures collapsed. The elders, the keepers of knowledge, of history, of songs, of rituals, died. The priests, the leaders, the strongest warriors died. Agriculture halted. There was no one left to plant the corn. Famine followed plague. Historians estimate that up to 90, even 95% of the indigenous population was wiped out in the first century. 90%. Try to comprehend that number. This was not a series of individual tragedies. It was an extinction event. The wild, empty lands that later settlers would claim as untouched were in fact mass graveyards. They were planting their flags on a freshly widowed continent. And how could so few conquer so many? The answer is not just guns and disease. It was a philosophical weapon, a legal and religious one. It was called the Doctrine of Discovery. Through papal bulls, like Inter Caetera in 1493. The Church granted the Catholic monarchs of Spain and Portugal the right to any land they discovered, as long as it was not already held by a Christian king. This essentially turned millions of indigenous people into non-humans. They had no right to their land. They had no sovereignty. They were merely part of the flora and fauna, waiting to be civilized or eliminated. Their souls were to be saved, often by force, but their bodies and their lands were forfeit. This was the moral justification for the single largest theft in human history. They didn't just come for gold. They came with the ironclad belief that God was on their side, that they were on a divine mission. And nothing is more dangerous than an invader who believes he is a savior. Now, let's look closer at those heroes. Christopher Columbus. He never set foot on mainland North America. He died believing he had found Asia, and he was a brutal, incompetent governor. In his own journal, he described the Taino people as gentle, unarmed, willing to trade everything they owned. And in the very next sentence, he mused, "With 50 men, we could subjugate them all and make them do whatever we want." And that is exactly what he did. He established the encomienda system. It was slavery, in all but name. He gave native villages to his soldiers. In exchange for protecting them and instructing them in Christianity, these soldiers had the right to their forced labor. The gold tribute policy was real. Anyone who failed to meet the quota had their hands chopped off and were left to bleed to death. His cruelty was so profound that even other Spaniards complained. He was eventually arrested, put in chains, and shipped back to Spain to face charges of mismanagement. The glory of Columbus was a myth constructed much later, especially in the United States, by people who wanted a founding hero who wasn't British. And Hernán Cortés, conqueror of the Aztec Empire, a military genius, or a master of deceit and psychological warfare. He arrived at Tenochtitlan, a city floating on a lake with canals, bridges, and floating gardens. It was larger, cleaner, and more organized than any city in Europe. The Emperor Montezuma, torn by prophecies and indecision, welcomed Cortés into the city. A fatal mistake. Cortés immediately took Montezuma hostage, turning the great emperor into his puppet. He didn't win in a fair fight. Before he even reached the city, he conducted a calculated massacre at Cholula, killing thousands of unarmed nobles in a single square as a message. An act of terrorism. And his greatest weapon, not guns, not horses. It was his indigenous allies, the Tlaxcalans. They were the Aztecs' mortal enemies. Cortés brilliantly exploited this political rivalry. He promised them freedom. Tens of thousands of Tlaxcalan warriors fought alongside Cortés. They were the real army that took Tenochtitlan. But even then, the Aztecs fought. They fought fiercely, street by street, house by house, in a brutal siege. When the city finally fell, after smallpox had already killed half the population, it was a hellscape. Cortés ordered the city to be leveled, the canals filled in with the rubble of the pyramids. And then, he betrayed his Tlaxcalan allies, subjecting them to the same new rule, Francisco Pizarro in Peru. The story is even more brutal. The Inca Empire was just emerging from a civil war. Pizarro, with fewer than 200 men, took advantage of it. He lured the Inca Emperor Atahualpa to a peaceful meeting in Cajamarca. Atahualpa arrived, unarmed, with his ceremonial retinue. Pizarro ambushed them, slaughtered thousands, took Atahualpa captive, and then he demanded the most ludicrous ransom in history: a large room to be filled once with gold and twice with silver. The Inca complied. They stripped the temples. They brought treasure from across the empire. And when the room was full, what did Pizarro do? Did he honor his word to free the emperor? No. He held a sham trial, charged Atahualpa with idolatry, incest, for marrying his sister per royal Inca tradition, and rebellion against a Spanish king Atahualpa had never even heard of. He was executed. This was not a war. It was a kidnapping for ransom, ending in a calculated murder. The destruction did not stop at life. It was a cultural genocide, a systematic attempt to erase the memory of an entire continent. They believed they were destroying evil. Bishop Diego de Landa, in the Yucatan, in a single act of fanaticism, ordered all Mayan codices to be collected and burned. Thousands of books, holding thousands of years of history, astronomy, medicine, and theology, he proudly proclaimed. We found a large number of books in these characters, and as they contained nothing in which there were not to be seen superstition and lies of the devil, we burned them all. Only 4 are known to survive today. Imagine it. Imagine if the Library of Alexandria was burned, not once, but thousands of times over, across a continent. That is what happened. Temples were torn down. Churches were built directly on top of their foundations, often using the very same sacred stones. A domination not just of arms but of spirit. Languages were forbidden. Rituals were outlawed. Children were taken from their parents and put in mission schools, where they were beaten for speaking their native tongue, where they were taught to be ashamed of who they were. The very concept of land was attacked. For indigenous people, land was not a thing to be owned. Land was mother. You cannot sell your mother. You belong to the land. The land does not belong to you. The concept of private property of fences was an obscenity, but for the invader, land was a commodity. It was divided, sold, given as a reward to soldiers. The people were forced onto reservations, onto the most barren plots. Their means of survival were stolen. But this tragic story, if it ended only in destruction, would also be a half-truth. The other half, the real glory, is the resistance. Do not ever believe the myth of the passive, gentle native who simply accepted his fate. They fought. They fought in every conceivable way. They fought with force. The Mapuche Arauco War in Chile lasted for almost 300 years. They adapted. They learned to ride horses. They learned to use guns. Lautaro, a young Mapuche leader who had been a servant to a Spanish general, learned their tactics, escaped, and led a devastating uprising, the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 in New Mexico. Led by Popeye, the disparate Pueblo tribes united, a rare feat, and successfully drove the Spanish completely out of their territory for 12 years. It remains one of the most successful acts of resistance. They fought by retreating, fleeing into the deep Amazon, into the high Andes, where cavalry could not follow, and they fought with culture. This was the quietest but most persistent resistance. When forbidden from worshipping their gods, they hid them inside the images of Catholic saints. The earth goddess Pachamama was hidden in the robes of the Virgin Mary. They continued to practice their old ceremonies in secret at night. They continued to tell the old stories, to pass down their history orally. They kept the fire of their culture alive, even if it was just an ember through 500 years of attempted extinguishment. and today. This history is not in the past, it is the present. The invasion continues not with swords but with mining contracts, with oil pipelines cutting through sacred land, with the deforestation of the Amazon. The descendants of these great civilizations are still fighting. They are fighting to protect their water at Standing Rock. They are fighting for their sovereignty. They are fighting to reclaim their languages, to teach their children who they are. They are fighting against the poverty, the discrimination, and the epidemic of missing and murdered indigenous women. Those bronze statues of Columbus, of Cortés, still stand. And some people say that tearing them down is erasing history. But that is an irony. History was already erased. It was erased when the books were burned. It was erased when the temples were leveled. It was erased when the textbooks told only one side of the story. Questioning these statues is not about erasing history. It is about completing it. It is about adding the chapters that were ripped out. It is about acknowledging that discovery had a cost. And that cost was paid in blood, in tears, and in an entire world that was lost. The real glory, if there is any, lies not with the conquerors. It lies in the extraordinary resilience, the unbelievable persistence of the people who survived the apocalypse and are still here telling their story. We just need, finally, to listen. Thanks for watching until the end. What was your favorite part? Please let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss my future content. Your support is my biggest motivation. Thank you all so much.